Okay, so I just wrote a message in the chat that you're welcome to jump in with questions at any time or use the chat and just text if you prefer that method, and just depending on if you're in a public place or not too. So I will want to go over the final projects on our course page. So I am going to share my screen and I'm going to jump into As You Learn, and you can follow along if you like. So you should be able to see my screen. Everybody see it? Okay, see some head nods there. Move this around. So I'm down, scrolled all the way down. We're on the last module for our final project. So this is just the last 3 weeks. It's just you working on your final websites for the class. So everything, all the other modules we've worked on has worked up to this point, and you're going to implement some of those tools you learned onto your final sites. So I'm going to start with the first final project, and that's the ePortfolio. So you'll see the assignment sheets for all 3 final projects here as the PDF file. So make sure that you download that and review that. And then you'll turn in your assignments here in the submission area. So the ePortfolio, you'll just turn in that, copy and paste your website URL. Then same thing for your professional site. Then the responsive redesign will be a little bit different. You can turn it in as that website URL, or you can package or compress that entire root folder like you've done with some of the homework assignments. So I'll review those in detail. I'm going to go ahead and pull up that PDF file. So remember that you have access to this file on As You Learn. And this is the first page that essentially this is your entire final project website index page. And I'm going to show you how it's set up in Dreamweaver. But just to begin, I want to make sure that you understand that you will have to include your homework 6, homework 8, then your final sites as links on your index page. And you only have one index page on the server. That's the index.html page. So let me just go into Dreamweaver right now and show you the sample. So this is a student's root folder for their final project site. So now you may have a WIP folder, you may have different folders nested within that for different homework assignments. You should now create a separate folder within that folder. So when you set up your site and manage sites, you want to point specifically to this site for your final projects. And that will be your root folder for the final projects. So within this root folder, you'll see that there is one index.html page, and that is not nested inside a folder. So don't put that in another folder, because when you upload it to the ASU server, it's going to look exactly like this. So this is the root folder directory. And when you upload it, it's going to just copy these files in that same structure, in that same directory, over to the server. And so the server is going to look for index.html. If it doesn't see index.html, it won't show up on the server when you put in that URL. So if you put it inside a folder, it can't find it because it's not in your root directory. What you will, and I'll show you what it looks like when I actually put it on the server. So right now, though, let's just take a look at this index.html page. So remember, this is the index page for your entire site. And it's also the index page for your entire final projects. So you've got several other pages and sites nested within this index page. So you've already done the text formatting and hyperlinks. You've already done the image maps. Now you're going to add an ePortfolio. You're going to add the professional site, and then your responsive site. So this is a previous class. Each semester it's set up a little bit differently. So like yours actually you will type in here professional site and link that site. And then you'll have the option of linking your responsive site or submit it as a root folder. So this is optional here. If you link the responsive site as a fully functional website within your website here, you'll get a 1 point extra credit, but that is up to you if you want to do that or just submit your folder, the root folder for that. Okay, so you've got these root folders are really subdirectory folders. So you really only have one root folder. And then because you only have one index.html page for the ASU server, you're going to create subdirectories within that root folder. So if you look at project 1, if I select the text for ePortfolio, let's take a look at the properties panel and see this is your root directory. It's in this folder, project 1, and then the home page is called ePortfolio homepage.html. So if I expand project 1 subfolder, you'll see here's ePortfolio homepage.html. So you want to make sure that it's the root directory here, the directory for that subfolder is correct. Project 1 folder, ePortfolio homepage.html. So I just want to say that because if you upload this to the folder, but then to the server, and then you decide to change things around, like if you rename this something else, or you take this page out of the folder, then your website's not going to work on the server anymore. You have to relink it. So if I take this ePortfolio homepage out of the folder, then I have to relink it here. So the link, I will take out that project 1 folder. Is that making sense to y'all, or is that still confusing? Okay, someone's got a question here. Yeah, so what you're going to submit is just your URL address. Okay, so I'm going to view this index page in Google Chrome in my browser here. Actually, I don't want to save this. So I'm just going to say, don't save. So this is his web or her index.html page. And it's got the homework 6, homework 8, and then the final projects linked here. And since I'm looking at this, you don't copy, that is just for a browser preview from Dreamweaver. So this is not what you copy and paste. What you copy and paste is going to look like this. So it's actually going to look like this. So it's the appstate.edu and that tilde symbol, your username. And then you don't actually have to type in index.html. It automatically assumes that index.html comes after your username. So the server is just going to look directly for index.html. So if I type in index.html, it's going to give me the same home page. So it doesn't matter if you type it in or not, it's looking for index.html. So don't name it anything else. It's just name it exactly index.html. And so this is after you upload your files to the server. So if I go back to Dreamweaver, I would have to go in and define my server and go through, add the ASU server settings. Like, you know, you should have already done, select SFTP, put in the www.appstate.edu, put your username and password in. Then your root directory is going to be public_HTML. And that's your folder for the ASU server, for your username folder. And in that folder, it's going to look for index.html, which you should have here. Not nested in another folder, but directly in your public _ HTML folder. And so then you would just replace that with your first letter of your last name and then your username. Once you save that, then you'll click on that connect plug. Then you'll click on the up arrow to upload this entire root folder onto your ASU server. So you should already have that because you've done homework 6 and homework 8, so you should already have an index.html page, you should have an images folder, you should have an image maps.html page, and you should have a text.html page. What you're adding is your project 1, project 2, project 3 subfolders. All right, so let me go back and look at it on the browser. So here's his index.html page. And here's the homework 6. You can see the directory here, appsday.edu, tilde username, and then he's actually got it inside a text folder, but it would be here, it should be text.html. Then if I go back and click on his image map link, it should say image map.html. So his directory is set up a little bit differently, but that's what yours should look like. And if I go to someone else's, let me see here. So here's an example of hers is set up directly text.html. And then if I click on image map, it's image map.html, and she's actually got it in an image map folder. So does that make sense? So here's your username /, then this is the folder name, then this is the file name within that folder. So that's how subdirectories work. So let me go back to this index page. So you've got the homework 6, homework 8. Now you've linked to ePortfolio. And this is just a preview. So your URL is going to actually look like this. So she's got a portfolio folder, and then she's got this index page within that folder. Here she's got a folder named Portfolio version 2, and then porthome.html file inside that folder. So I recommend that you don't name any, only have one index.html file, and then your project folders, give it a different name. So here she's named it ePortfolio homepage. Project 2, the homepage is called well, she's named it index.html here, but I would name it something else just so you don't get confused. Then project 3 is homepage.html. So if you give your home pages a different name for each subfolder, then that way you don't get that index.html page mixed up with another homepage for another site. If this is still confusing y'all at all, you can always ask me later or have me go over it with you individually later. But I'm just going to go ahead and move on here. But Nick, is that helping answer your question?
Yes, very simple.
Okay.
I was actually about to ask next if our design had to be that complex, because I know that other Rachel, she had a gradient. No, not Rachel. There was another site that you were using.
Yeah.
You said the HTML index web page was different, but he had like an entire gradient. And
right.
like, I was wondering if we had to do the same, but I guess here's an example. I guess we don't.
Right. Yeah. So, so your index page for your entire site can look as simple as this. So as long as I can access these pages and sites within the site, But if you want to, you can redesign. Let me go back to her initial index page. So this is just a very simple index page. So what some students did, here's a good example. So this is his index page, and he redesigned his index page to make it look like a kind of a landing page for his entire site. You don't have to do that. Yours can be just as simple as just this index page, but then with the links to your final sites. So that's up to you. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here. I can't see where I'm going. Yeah, so here's Ben. So this is his class index page, and he redesigned it to be a landing page for his entire class site, basically. You don't have to do that. You don't have to format that main index page. You can just link it to your final sites and the homework pages. But I know that everyone is coming into this class with different experience and with different expectations. So it's really what you want to get out of it. You know, if you want to take that extra step because you want to learn more and you want to create a landing page, if you already have some experience, or you just feel really good about this class, or you're just really adept with the Dreamweaver, go for it. But if you don't, you know, don't stress yourself out either. So it's kind of either or. So that won't affect your grade. All right, so now I want to take a look at that first homework, final project assignment more closely. So here's the link to the ePortfolio. So we looked at the directory for that. It's nested in this Project One folder. Now I'm going to open up this ePortfolio homepage. So this is all designed in Dreamweaver. And so you have to use Dreamweaver to design your first two final sites. So this is the portfolio, and we can look at this on the browser. I've got to move stuff around here. So the requirements for the ePortfolio are that you can look over this on the rubric on the assignment sheet, but you need to include a header of some sort, a heading with a title. So this is kind of the heading or header, and the title of her site is just her name and the portfolio, and then a navigation menu. And it can be a navigation bar, but it's up to you how you want to design your navigation, but you need to include the navigation, and make sure you include the navigation on every page of your site, so that on each page I can go back to the home page, or I can go to the contact page. And you need to have 5 pages in your site. This is in addition to that overall index page that I showed you that you can redesign or not. You have to have 5 additional pages to that. So this is its own site, and there needs to be 5 pages. So I think on this one, it looks like there may be just 4. So you want to make sure you have 5 pages to get full credit. So this is the home page. It's got that like introduction that you did for the text assignment. It should, if you designed a logo for your ePortfolio, include that logo. It needs to have a footer. So you can use this back to index page as your footer if you want. You could be your name, it can be a copyright, it can be an email address. If I click on this, it goes back to that index page for the entire class site. And then I can go back to the ePortfolio page. It needs to include a resume. So you can link it to a resume. You can just include the text on the page. So it's up to you how you want to format it, but you need to include your resume. You need to include a gallery of work that needs to have 10 samples. So here are some photos, and then it's also linked to a video. But you don't want to just link to another site, let's say that you did in Wix, but you want to, let me go ahead and stop. So this was a video that she created. but you want to include your images designed and laid out in Dreamweaver. If you don't think that you have 10 samples of work to show, you can just embed a video, and I can work with you on that. I can show you examples. So this is a website that I have, and I've got a video page, and I have some videos embedded on here. So if you don't have a lot of work samples that just aren't conducive to images, you can just do an introduction video. And I've got an example of an introduction video here on this site. So I can work with you on that if you think that's going to be an issue. Go back to, all right. So another requirement for your ePortfolio is the animated GIF or animated GIF, however you want to say it. But this is just an example. You can use the one you've already created, or you can create a new one, but just try to use it in a way that reinforces the content or reinforces your site. So you can think about how you may use that. That's why we talked about that early on. You know, how can you use this format or technique to enhance your site? And so that's another requirement. And then you need to have a contact page. So on your contact page, it can be a form or it can be an image map with links to your social media or email or whatever. But you do need to have 5 pages. And so these samples that I'm showing you are not all consistent with the requirements for this class. So make sure that you've got 5 plus this index page. And so I showed this example of, this is also an example of a photography site that I've done. And so this is another example of what could work for an ePortfolio. If you're a photographer, you could have a home page, an About Me page. You could have other examples of photography. But all of the work that you display on your site needs to be your original images. So these are all images, obviously, that I took, and all the content is content that I wrote. So don't just take images off the internet, even though you could do that for your homework assignments. For this final projects, I want them all to be original content. Okay, so these are all, you know, my own photos, and then this site is the same. This is also a portfolio site, and then I've included my link to my home page here at the bottom, and I've linked to my resume here as a PDF file. And then these are all links to other pages on my site. And then in my footer, I've got an email link and the ASU link, and then a copyright text. So this is another example of an ePortfolio logo, header. You don't have to have a logo for your ePortfolio, but at least a header. Then the navigation. So he's got at least 5 pages within this site. And then the other example, here's an example of final ePortfolio, and then this is his navigation, and there's his animation. And then this is her ePortfolio with the navigation links. And I have these also, I have some of these samples on the course page. If you go to under helpful resources, you can always go back and look at some of the previous courses. It's under final project website samples. So you can look at some of these, just click on these links and look at some examples there if you like. All right, so I'm going to move on to then project 2. So let me go back to Dreamweaver. So this is taking longer than I anticipated, but I want to make sure I cover everything. So for the project 2, we're going to look at the nested folder here. This is her index page for the project 2, which is the professional site that you're working with a group on. So for this site, it's the same thing in that you need to include 5 pages plus that index page for your entire site. So this is the home page for this site. Then there's an about page, a contact page, resources, and events. And so this group just chose to do a site for an organization on campus. And you do, though, need to make sure that each person in your group has all the files added to their root folder. So don't just link to a group member's site, but make sure that each person in the group has all the files so they can link to their own site on their index page. So if I were to view this in the browser, it would be linked to this folder in her site and not to my partner's site. All right, so make sure that each person has all the files set up in their root folder. Also, you need to include a logo. So the logo is a requirement for the professional site. So you need to, whether it's a logo you already created or your group will need to create a logo that's going to work for this site. You also need to have a contact form in this case. So the ePortfolio, you could use an image map in place of a contact form, but for the professional site, you have to use a contact form. And for all your pages, it needs to be linked back to your index page. So I can always go back to your home page as well as the index page for your entire site. Let me pull up the page here. So look carefully at your assignment sheet because it does include a rubric with what I'm going to look for as far as grading. And there are also some links here on the PDF assignment sheet. So the professional site here, you can also redesign the site for His High Places. This is just an organization, a counseling ministry. They contacted me about doing a site redesign for them. So if you could not think of something that you wanted to design a site for professionally, you can choose this. It's linked here, and you can go directly to their current website to see how it looks. And they want this site to be redesigned. You can also click on this link to see the content that they have provided. So there's a Google Drive folder that they have uploaded some of their files on, and some of you have already designed logos for them, and I've placed them in the student logo folder. So that's just an option if your group wants to do that. So this is really important that you need to start using this Google Plus community. It's linked on our course page. So what you do is just scroll down on the left side and look for your group name, and then make sure that you're communicating this way. Since I'm not going to be able to meet with each one of your groups in person, this is the way that that I can see your correspondence and your communication, and that I can communicate with you too. So I'll be looking over all of these groups and making sure that everyone is participating in the group. And so I can also get an idea of what you've decided on, what you're doing in your group. So make sure you let me know, as well as the rest of your group know, what you've decided on as far as your topic and sharing. You can share images this way too, or links, but do make sure that you're using this as part of your grade. So if you look on the rubric for the professional site, that's part of the grading is full active engagement in the Google Plus community. Okay, so back to the professional site, I wanted to show some other examples. So this is the one that I had showed before. There's their about page. Some of their links are broken here. So let me go to another example. So I'm going to go back to the gallery or Bob Ross Gallery of Happy Sites and look at some professional site examples. So here's another one where they they designed a site for a club or an organization on campus. And you can just see how they've linked the form that's required here. And I think there is an actual form somewhere on there. It's on the Contact Us page. So here's the form on the Contact Us page. So this would be like what you did on the homework 10, actually creating a form. And then let me go back to the course page so we can look at some other examples. This was, I thought, really well done, where this group made up a coffee shop. So they just created a site for a fake coffee shop, designed a logo for it. So this is the landing page for that coffee shop. Then you enter the site. There is an About Us page. And this is a photo that they actually took. And they just made up all the content. Then went to, they have a menu page. Then there's another page linked on the menu page to this weekly specials page. And then there's locations. And if you go to one of these, I think it's the main page here, they actually link each member of the group. They linked their ePortfolio sites on the website. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach the professional project. So it doesn't have to be a real company or organization. You can make one up too. So again, you can look back on this gallery of sites to see some other ideas. And then on the assignment sheet, I've linked a site that I did for Nomad Cookie Co. here. And this is an example that you can see just that it has 5 sites and the buttons change on each site. And you're able to access every page on each site. So that's really important, is how smooth and streamlined is the navigation throughout the site. So if I click on the About Us page, then the About Us button disappears, but all the other buttons to the rest of the site are accessible. So I can click back to the home page. Then I can go to the To Order page. Then I can go to Local Market. And then I can go to Contact Us, and I can always go back to the home page. So, and then my social media buttons are linked here, and the email also. So that's linked to the assignment sheet if you wanted to look at that as an example. So, and these are all designed in using Dreamweaver. Are there any questions about the professional group project? So if on Google Plus, you want to make sure that you're logged in with your ASU account, email account. If not, then it won't recognize you as a member. So make sure that you use your AppState email when you're logging in.
So I've had trouble with that.
Okay.
I think what happened is that somehow I've got logged in with my regular email and not my ASU email. And so it will only let me access this via my regular email and not my ASU email.
Okay, so then can you still use it with your other email and still?
I should be able to.
Okay.
I was just.
It might have you logged on as both, because I'm on there with 2 different accounts, email accounts too.
I can try again. I haven't tried since, but
right.
But yeah, it's just been finicky for me. So I was wondering if it was possible to just include you in the email we've been using.
Yeah, that's fine if you just can't get it to work, but just try for me again, just because that would be a lot of emails back and forth that I'd be getting. So it's easier for me to have it all in one space. But if
All right.
it's not working for you or for your group, that's fine. And you can still, if your group wants to meet with me in person, we can still set up a time to meet in person too. It's just that I just realize it's not feasible to do that with every group with all the different schedules and the holiday, but I could still meet with some groups if that would be beneficial to you. So that's still an option too. Yeah, okay, so there's another question. Yeah, I really prefer that you use your own images on the professional site too. So if you were doing, let's say that His High Places site, they provided some images for you and you could ask for more images. Hopefully there's somebody in your group that can have some images that you can use. But since you're working with the web, it doesn't have to be high resolution. So you should be able to generate your own photos. If that becomes a real sticky point, depending on what your professional site is, you can just talk to me about it and we can kind of evaluate per group. Does that answer your question, Jaslyn? Okay. All right, so now let's go on to the responsive redesign, because this is the one that is a little bit different. So I want to make sure that this is clear for everybody. So for the responsive site redesign plan, you are taking a site that you've already designed, so either your ePortfolio or the professional site, and you're redesigning it to be responsive. Now, I have changed this a little bit because I found I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by having to learn Bootstrap or Fluid Grid or jQueries to create a responsive site. Ideally, it's best to create a responsive site at the get-go, but we have not really learned all of the tools to build a responsive site, and so at this point, I don't want you to feel like you have to learn Bootstrap or learn how to use the Fluid Grid template so late in the semester. You will cover that in the intermediate web design class. If any of y'all are taking that class, that would be the one after this class. So they'll go more in depth in that class. But for this purpose, I just want you to think responsively and how you could redesign a site, because this would be a real world kind of problem if someone has a site, let's say, but it's not responsive, and then they come and ask you to redesign it to be responsive. How would you go about doing that? So I want to see more of the design plan and the thought process behind that. So you're going to take either your ePortfolio or your professional site. If you design those to be responsive initially, that's fine, but you still have to redesign it for this assignment in order to get credit for it. So don't just think, okay, I've already designed my professional site to be responsive, so I don't have to do project 3. No, you still have to turn in project 3. So how can you redesign it to be responsive then? So let me show you some examples. And we'll start with the one I've got up in Dreamweaver. So we're going to go to project 3. I'm going to close this one out and open up the home page for the responsive site. So then if I look at this on the browser, if I collapse this site to different screen sizes, you can see that it collapses now to one column, and the text also collapses. It doesn't get cut off, but it works when it's on a smaller screen size. And the navigation also still works on the smaller screen size. So if I look at the initial ePortfolio, it looks a little bit different. So you see these images are larger. If I go to the responsive site, these images are now stacked on a column. The logo is smaller. It's still the same content, basically, the same color scheme, the same style, but it's been modified 4 different screen sizes. So that's mainly what I'm looking for, that there's been some thought behind how to make it more user-friendly at smaller screen sizes. It doesn't have to be a major redesign, and it doesn't have to be fully functioning. So if it's not working, like if there's still some issues with the responsiveness, that's okay. And again, I'm just keeping in mind with the different levels of experiences that and skill sets that you'll have in this class. So some of you may be able to create a fully responsive site and it's going to be beautiful. But some of you may still be struggling with that at this point. So I'm going to be looking at it from all different angles. Here's some other examples of response. So this is a site that I designed in Muse. And we did that in the beginning of the class with the site plan. If some of you still have Muse installed and you want to use Muse, because Muse has visual queries that you can use also to create a responsive site plan, feel free to do that if you have it at your disposal. If not, don't worry about it, just do it in Dreamweaver. All your other final sites have to be done in Dreamweaver. So the responsive one is the one that there's a little more leeway, more options available to you. So if I collapse this Muse site to different sizes, my image shrinks down, but my text gets kind of funky. If I go to this link, on the full desktop size, it works because I've got these text links to different pages, and I want it to work on the wave. But when I shrink it down to different sizes, it doesn't work so well. So if I were to redesign this to be responsive, then I would change these links. Maybe I would create a navigation menu or just have them stacked on top of each other. Maybe I would get rid of this image and just streamline it and make it simpler. On my home page, I've got this image that's all in full color, but then on the About Me page, I've got the wave faded back. So maybe that would be something I would do to make it more responsive. Maybe I would just take this image off altogether. So just think about ways to make it more, the user experience better on those different screen sizes. This is a site that I did using a template in Dreamweaver, and you can see how it collapses down to the different column sizes, from 3 columns down to 1 column. And then same thing with my photography site, which I also did using a template in Dreamweaver, and it collapses down, and then the navigation collapses down to a hamburger menu. So on this site, you can see, let me go back to the home page. Oops. All right, let's look at this one. So here, I'm going to go back to his index page. So this was his ePortfolio page. Then here's the responsive one. So you redesign the ePortfolio, and he took out this background image in the header. And when it shrinks down, you've got this hamburger menu. So there's some subtle changes from the responsive and the initial ePortfolio. And they're not huge changes, but some subtle things here and there, some tweaking just to make it the experience better overall. You know, that the images are going to load faster if it's not bogged down with a lot of images. Maybe you would just take out some text and just include the logo when it shrinks down. So there's different ways that you can go about the redesign for that. If you wanted to use Photoshop and just lay out the redesigned pages in Photoshop, that would be an option too, kind of like you did with the site plan. Except if you do that, I need to see every page laid out in Photoshop with the navigation, with all the text content and the graphics. And you can go back and look in that Photoshop assignment for quiz 1 that we did in module 2 to see how you could use Photoshop to set that up. So that's just another option if you don't feel that comfortable with doing it in Dreamweaver. But with that said, there's really a very simple way that you could set up a responsive site in Dreamweaver. So in Dreamweaver here, I can go to File, New, and I can select different templates. So if you wanted to use starter templates, that's fine. You can go to create a new document and you can select a Bootstrap, and then you can select these starter templates. So let's say I select this template. I can now you're familiar with CSS Designer panel and with the selectors, I can go in and change some of these styles using this basic template. So I can see this header is set to this class selector, primary header. So I can go in to the primary header class selector, and let's say I want to change the color from this blue. I can select a different color and change some of the CSS styles that way. I can change the font styles. I can put in my own content, replace all this content with my own content and with my own images. So you could use that too. And then when you're in Bootstrap and you go to Live View, it actually provides visual media queries so that I can click on this and see how it's going to collapse to a one-column format on the smartphone size. And it shows you how many pixels the width would be. So if it were for a tablet or something. So that would be an easy way you could do it in Dreamweaver using Bootstrap. But again, I'm not requiring that you do it in Bootstrap. So you've got some different options in how you can do that. So if you wanted to create your responsive site in Dreamweaver and just compress that project 3 into a zip file and submit it that way, then this project 3 would be your root folder for project 3. You can submit it that way if you don't want to link it on your index.html page. If you do link it on your index page, though, you will get that extra credit point if it's going to be fully functional. And so that's an example here. Let me go back to its home page. So here it's linked on the index page. So if you've got all of your final sites linked to your index page and it's fully functional on a site, on your site as responsive, you'll get the extra credit point. So again, just make sure that when you go though to that your professional site, that this URL is going to be, your root directory should be nested in your root folder, not your partner's root folder, but it has to be your root folder. So it shouldn't be somebody else's name when I click on that link. It should be in your root folder. So you need to have all of the files in your root folder. I just wanted to go back to the professional site and make sure that was clear. So on your responsive redesign, you just include the same content you did for ePortfolio or professional site, whichever one you choose to redesign, but you can edit the text in the graphics. You can reduce the amount of text if you want, reduce the amount of graphics. But it's going to be the same basic site, just redesigned. And then if you go to the responsive site rubric, there's that Nomad Cookie Co. responsive site. This was also done using a template in Dreamweaver so that if I collapse to a smaller screen size, it's going to work better. And you can see the difference between this site and then the other site that I did that they're actually using, but there's more white space. The navigation is on the bottom, so when you scroll down, you can click on these buttons. And then if you go to that PDF page, that you can link to my photography site too, which is also responsive. So that was a lot that we had to cover, but are there any other questions now? That's basically what I wanted to cover for the final site. So if you feel good, you're welcome to go check out now. But if you have any other questions, you're welcome to stay and I can help answer any questions that you might have. Yes, so you are. So yeah, you are, I'm sorry, just answering Juliet's question. You are allowed to use the provided templates in Dreamweaver.
So if I'm to understand this correctly, the redesign project is just we're redesigning the one of our previous websites to be able to fit mobile and smaller screens.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so all that research you did for the discussion 5, now you apply it to this project. So think about the research of what makes the site responsive, streamlining your graphics, faster, quick load times for someone who's interacting with it on their phone, for example, or different screen sizes, and how you can make that user interaction easier. Any other questions? And don't forget to participate in that Google Plus community so I can see that communication, or contact me if you want to set up a group meeting too, or an individual meeting. I'm still available to do that. And I don't know if any of y'all are still having issues with connecting to the ASU server and uploading your site. So that is really priority right now. So make sure if yours is not working or you don't know how to set it up, to set up an in-person meeting with me so we can get that going, because your first project and your second project have to be linked to your ASU server site. Anything else y'all can think of? I know that was a lot. Have any of y'all who are still with me here been able to meet with your groups or talk about what you're doing for your professional site?
More or less.
Okay.
Yeah, more or less. We've met with, at least I have, I've met with Tori and Travis, but we still have to sit down and actually start working.
Okay, yeah. And I know if it's hard to meet in person with your different schedules, you could do video meetings too. You could do Google Hangout, or you can obviously communicate in the Google Plus, but if that's not going to be enough probably, so you can do video meetings if you just can't find a time in your schedule to all meet up in one place. Okay, good. Jaslyn's group is getting something set up. And then, yeah, so if you're having any problems with your group members too, let me know in that Google community, or if you want it to be non-public, you can email me about it. Has anyone been able to start on their ePortfolio yet? Okay, so that's due November 27th. Are there any questions about that, since that's the first final project, about what you need for that?
Should we include stuff like treat it as if it's gonna be our portfolio, like have our important stuff, or like stuff relating to our major in it, or could it be like a fun portfolio that just has a lot of things that we made that we're proud of, or like how would you want that?
Well, since you have to include your resume, I was thinking more of that this would actually be a portfolio you would want to show to a potential employer. But if you want to go a different direction and have it be more fun, I've had a student who did, because she's an illustrator, she's a GATE student and she does a lot of illustration and some things related to gaming. So her site was more specific about that, but she still included her resume on there. But then she had other links to social media that were more like illustration driven with the animation style of illustration. And so that whole site reflected that. And that's fine too. You know, if that's something, there's something really you're interested in, or if you're an artist and you've got a lot of examples of your artwork and you want to focus more on that, that's fine too. But include a resume on there somewhere. And it can be, like I showed in that example, doesn't have to be a letter size format or the professional standard format resume, but it needs to have, the content has to have what a resume normally has, like your education and your work experience and other skills and assets that you have, but you can relate that to your illustration work or whatever the theme of your site is. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I'll probably just go ahead and close the meeting.
I mean, I probably have more questions, but is it fine if I just email you?
Yes, yeah,
Questions? Okay.
sure. Yeah.
I can't think of any right now. That's fine.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's cool. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Anything?
Other than, did you get my email for the late assignment that I submitted?
I believe so. Yeah, I've done several emails. I haven't responded to yet, but I'll try to respond to it after I've graded it and let you know when your grade is updated.
Sounds good. All right.
Yeah.
Have a good and safe rest of your weekend.
Yeah. Thank you. You too. You all stay safe and warm.
Happy snow day.
Yeah, happy snow day. All right. Take care. Thank you. You too.